Chris O'Connor here. Join the Curmudgeon Rock Report's invite-only curmudgeonly community at facebook.com/curmudgeonrock. Also look out for a Spotify playlist that pays honor to this episode.
This is the Curmudgeon Rock Report, and this is your podcast made by rock geek iconoclastic outsiders for rock geek iconoclastic outsiders. For those of you who lament that rock music has gone the way of jazz and slipped into niche genre status, we are here to keep that flame alive by providing insight, analysis, recommendations, and honest takes, not hot takes. And hey, there's a good chance you'll learn some rock history you never knew before. As the record-setting Oasis reunion tour continues its trek around the world, we continue our Britpop timeline series that analyzes the 1990s musical movement that gave birth to Oasis. Our previous episode covered the year 1994, which is when Britpop broke big onto the international consciousness, mostly because of the phenomenal critical and commercial success of two albums, Blur's Parklife and Oasis's Definitely Maybe. However, it was in 1995 that Britpop became a genuine pop cultural phenomenon. A whole new generation of British bands started making serious waves at home and abroad, thanks to classic albums and singles by the likes of Elastica, Pulp, and Supergrass. Even the B-list of Britpop bands and artists made some of their best work during this time. Sleeper, the Boo Radleys, Menswear, Cast, and several others released songs that perfectly define this era. While not being exactly Britpop, Britpop-adjacent bands and artists that were part of the general British rock revival of which Britpop was a part put out some of the greatest albums of the decade. Radiohead, PJ Harvey, and the Verve accordingly blew minds away. And the two biggest names of the movement, Blur and Oasis, also released classics that solidified their status. With the former, it was the last album of a trilogy before they totally reinvented themselves, both musically and artistically. With the latter, it was an album of blockbuster proportions that instantly made them one of the biggest bands of the world and of the decade. So, let's celebrate the year that represented the peak of the Britpop movement, and welcome to the Curmudgeon Rock Report.
Well, Art, it's about that time at the beginning.
What time is that?
It's the time at the beginning of our shows when we tear a big hole in the space-time continuum and we enter the parallel universe. Yes, folks, the parallel universe where blue is green and tall is short and everything is as it seems. And why? Because it's all cool. Rock and roll is still the thing, man. And rock and roll is still deified. And we still have rock gods and rock stars and guitar heroes. And everybody's in the jean jackets and they have the long hair. And they're wearing they're wearing the burlap sacks full of weed. And, bumming mom and dad's car to go to a stadium show on the weekend. And it's kind of interesting that, we have an Oasis stadium show happening on this side of the space-time continuum, but over there, Oasis never broke up, and they're still going strong, and they're still cultural heroes, like actual cultural heroes, as opposed to like a dad rock audience of people that can afford $1,000 tickets.
Well, that's not necessarily true. In our universe, the Oasis shows have been wildly multi-generational. Actually, a lot of young people are at these shows, man.
Yeah, go figure. But anyway, that's a long way of saying, like I said, so rock and roll is still on the cover of Rolling Stone. It's still on the billboards. It's still in the arenas. It's still the predominant thing. It never went the way of jazz. And so conceptually, this is a way of saying that this is the segment of our show where we cover new and newish artists that we think that you all will dig and that we highly recommend, and artists that in a parallel universe would be a hell of a lot bigger than they are on this side. So with that said, Art, who are you covering in this edition of the parallel universe?
Yes. In the 2010s, the British alternative rock band Wolf Alice made waves with a couple of great albums that referenced the peak of the late 1980s, early 1990s indie alternative rock scene while spinning it into their own unique sound. Most notable being 2017's Visions of a Life, one of the very best albums of the tens or the teens, I should say. They came back down to earth in a bad way with 2021's Blue Weekend, which earned very good reviews when it came out, but soon disappeared without a trace. It's easy to hear why, because of the record's uninspired mash of generic cliche indie pop and retro 80s synth pop. 4 years later, when they emerged on YouTube with the video for Bloom Baby Bloom, the lead single for new album, The Clearing, it appeared that Wolf Alice had sold out in the worst way. A wretched, choreographed dance video for a song that sounds like the worst concession to shitty mainstream pop imaginable, akin to something freaking Chapel Roan would have written. Thankfully, the song is in no way indicative of what the rest of The Clearing actually sounds like. It's certainly a pop album, but it's mostly pop that has more in common with 1970s singer-songwriter pop, with the specter of Fleetwood Mac and Elton John lingering over it. Opening track Thorns is a gorgeous piano ballad that manages to not be maudlin and tedious. Pay attention, Lana Del Rey. Passenger Seat and White Horses bring out the country rock and folk rock, respectively, but do so in a way that's totally assimilated into Wolf Alice's own sound and melodic style. Leaning Against the Wall sounds like the country / modern R&B hybrid that Beyonce pioneered with last year's Cowboy Carter album. You have beautiful folk ballads like Play It Out and Midnight Song, and the album ends with the sublime orchestral pop of The Sofa, a song that must be making Fleetwood Mac's Christine McVie smile up there in heaven. Yeah. Overall, it's a return to quality form for one of the UK's best bands. A solid 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Yeah,
Chris?
pretty good record. I'm surprised at how glossy the production is.
Yeah,
this is a very glossy record, which considering the 2017 record was like a veritable grunge record, or it was a lot of throwback grunge was on that, and so for them to go as glossy and as poppy as they are on this is kind of striking. But I think you're right. I think there is a lot of Fleetwood Mac. I hear pangs of Carole King. I think Elton John is a good call. So a lot of 70s singer-songwriter stuff, a lot of lilting acoustic stuff, especially in the middle of the record, from like Passenger Seat, Play It Out, Bread, Butter, Tea, Sugar is a really good song. You mentioned Midnight Song, and then obviously it ends with The Sofa. I like Bloom Baby Bloom. I gotta admit, that's it's kind of it's a bouncy, fun little pop song, I think it works, but yeah, just a lot of good stuff. Like Just Two Girls is a good song, what's her name? The
Ellie Rousel. She's like the lead singer, front woman for the band.
Yeah, she's a good singer. And what I do like about this record, though, for as glossy and as poppy and as retro as it is, she keeps the same attitude that she displayed on the earlier records. That she's quite fond of the F-bomb. Yeah. She's a potty mouth gal, and so she keeps that attitude on this, and so she hasn't sold out. So it's not like Liz Phair going and working with the Matrix songwriting team and like completely selling out. So it's not a sellout record, but it is just a straight pop record. And so but well done, very surprising. And you're right, that last record sucked. I don't think it's as good as the 2017 record. This one,
of course not.
No, I mean, like you said, that one, that was a Mercury Prize winner, actually.
Yeah.
And, did really well for itself and was really, really strong, especially the end of the record. There's just some kick-ass, grungy stuff on that.
Yeah.
But here, it's not necessarily a return to form, but it's a return to a good type of form,
Right.
And so, more power to Wolf Alice. Hopefully, this will continue. I'm curious to see what they'll morph into next. They obviously have a versatility to them and just really strong pop chops, as it turns out. So, good stuff. And so, we move now from Wolf Alice to an actual kind of a favorite of this podcast. Mexican art rock band duo, and they're a duo. Lorelle meets the Obsolete is something of a curmudgeonly favorite on this podcast. Both Arturo and I placed the band's 2023 album Datura on our end of the year top 10 lists. That experimental album seamlessly spliced psychedelic post-punk energy with EDM heavy instrumentation to serve up an alluringly sensual set of subtly textured but rocking tunes. If Lorelle meets the Obsolete's new single Regresar Recordar is
Regresar and recordar. Because of course I speak Spanish, so I know how to pronounce
I was going to say, we need our Latino to give a little flavor to it. Regresar Recordar. If that's any indication, then this band is not relenting in its efforts to shape its own brand of progressive dance rock. The new song is 6 minutes of sexy, sweaty energy. After a warbling, mysterious intro section, the song quickly catapults and then pulses along a crisp, powerful electric drum beat. That beat is painted with swirling keyboards, a nasty guitar-created lead line, and a vicious bed of electronic noise that seems to simulate wind. Meanwhile, frontwoman Lorena Quintanilla sings in a low-hanging but sexy drone, lending the song a dollop of drama. It's a song that could work in an underground punk club just as effectively as it could in a gay nightclub. The energy and rock and roll soul drip here with excitement and purpose. Regresar Recordar, Spotify tells me, will be the lead song off the band's upcoming album Corporal. The song definitely has me looking forward to that release. This is one of the most interesting and most dynamic bands on the planet here in 2025. What say you about Regresar Recordar?
Yeah, I think it's a good song. I'm looking forward to the new album because of it. For my line on Datura, their last album, was that basically it was really, really heavy art rock with heavy doses of industrial electronica and even a little bit of grunge in it.
Yeah.
With this, just this track. I don't know if the rest of the album is like this, but this track is basically really heavy art rock, but toned up in the post-punk electronica, if anything.
Yeah.
I hear a little bit of that, late 70s, early 80s, right before electronic music got synth poppy. It was really dirty and gloomy and heavy. And that's where Lorelle meets the Obsolete are drawing on with this track, in my opinion. I think a little bit of Cabaret Voltaire, a little bit of some of the stuff Gary Newman was doing before he took off big with Cars. Before Cars made him a pop star, basically. And so that really early, dirty, heavy electronica is what this track sounds like. And it's good. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this album. Again, it's going to be all in Spanish. I remember when there's bands from Mexico City, when they started out, all their songs are in English. I guess they're just abandoning that. It's like, fuck it, we're going to make it everything in our native language. Good for them. And so let's see where this album goes. The new single sounds pretty cool. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I remember on Datura, they flirted with some industrial rock too. There was some NIN influence.
Yeah, like I said, industrial electronica.
Yeah, as well. So there's none of the industrial on this, but like you said, it's a heavy electronica. It's almost with that guitar line. It almost has a metal energy to it.
Yeah,
kind of almost like electro metal. Yeah. And so just really, really cool stuff. And this album could be an event if this is any indication.
Chris here again. We usually end our episodes by inviting you to join our Curmudgeonly community page on Facebook. Well, we're picking up our efforts there. Know people just as passionate as us about rock and roll? Invite them to join in the fun. You don't actually need our permission to do so. Also, expect to see a lot more content up there moving forward. Our mission is to engage you, so darn it, we'll engage you like a fire hose, or maybe like a firehouse if we're going to give love to Gene Simmons. We may also be making a few offers. Want to wear a t-shirt featuring our logo? You may have that opportunity soon. So be a fellow curmudgeon, help us expand our little community, and share your own musings via your own posts. We're at facebook.com/groups/curmudgeonrock.
In 1995, Britpop went from being a defiantly anti-American music scene of like-minded indie and alternative rock artists and bands to a genuine pop cultural phenomenon. The rumbling started in 1992 to 93 with key singles and albums by a variety of bands, even ones that weren't directly Britpop and were rather Britpop adjacent. The dam burst in 1994 with the release of classic albums by Blur, Parklife, and Oasis, Definitely Maybe, making these two bands the leaders of this new wave. Much like with grunge rock in the US, you know a musical movement has thoroughly infiltrated the mainstream when its influence affects other sectors of art and society. When it comes to Britpop, fashion and clothing style had started to reflect the looks of musicians and band members from across the Britpop spectrum. All of a sudden, it was hip to look like Pulp's frontman Jarvis Cocker with retro 1970s polyester outfits and ironically geeky dark horn-rimmed glasses. All of a sudden, it was cool to wear parkas and have shaggy Beatlesque bowl haircuts like the members of Oasis. All of a sudden, it was fashionable to proudly wear tracksuits in public like Damon Albarn of Blur did during this time. 1 year later, the sounds of Britpop, particularly those of Blur, Elastica, Primal Scream, and British EDM groups, Underworld and Left Field, permeated the soundtrack to the highly successful film Trainspotting, an adaptation of Scottish author Irvine Welsh's book of the same name. These songs comfortably and seamlessly sat alongside older songs by David Bowie, Brian Eno, Joy Division, and New Order, as if to prove the timeless quality of the new British rock. 2 years later, Vanity Fair, a fashion magazine institution, would devote an entire issue to the new styles coming out of the UK that were profoundly influenced by Britpop, with photo spreads featuring various members of bands of the new British rock aristocracy. The cover even had Oasis singer Liam Gallagher lying in bed with his then-wife, actress Patsy Kensit. The British music industry has always been notoriously competitive, and the dramas and rivalries between bands and artists would usually unfold in the pages of weekly British music magazines, such as the New Musical Express and Melody Maker. Yet it speaks to the pervasive popularity of Britpop at the time that the feud between Oasis and Blur, one of the most legendary, ridiculous, and hilarious music feuds of all time, crossed over to mainstream news media, getting coverage all over traditional newspapers and TV news stations. It started in the spring of 1995 at a hotel party in honor of Oasis having reached #1 in the pop singles chart with their song Some Might Say, the first any of the new wave of British bands had hit the first time any of the new wave of British bands had hit the top spot. At this time, relations between the Blur and Oasis camps were quite cordial, but in his inimitable and snobbish way, Liam Gallagher couldn't help but rub it in Blur singer's Damon Albarn's face that Oasis hit #1 and Blur didn't. Blur were the older band, were 3 albums into their career, and while Parklife was a huge commercial and critical smash, they never hit #1 with any of their otherwise incredible singles. As you can imagine, this didn't sit well with Albarn, who had every bit as much of an ego as the Gallagher brothers. This meant war. And while the other members of Blur were complicit in escalating the feud, it was Allburn who spearheaded it, working the writers of all the British music magazines into a frenzy with all his verbal bashings of Oasis. Of course, the Gallaghers were never once to be quiet. They responded in kind with the most cruel comment coming from Noel Gallagher, wishing the members of Blur died of AIDS. There was a distinct class conflict angle to this feud, with Blur being a bunch of middle-class guys, upper middle class in American parlance, from the big city in London, who went to university. Oasis, on the other hand, were working class yabos from the north in Manchester, who would have been factory workers or drug dealers if music hadn't worked out for them. It didn't take long for mainstream music media outlets, newspapers and TV news stations especially, to pick up the story of these two extremely popular and extremely charismatic rock bands that genuinely hated each other. The rivalry reached its apotheosis moment in August of 1995 when both bands had scheduled the release of their next upcoming singles. Oasis had scheduled Roll With It to come out on August 14th. Having learned of this, Allburn asked Blur's record label to push up the release of the new Blur single, Country House, to come out on the exact same day. It was an unprecedented show of dick-wagging of the highest order, with music fans to decide the winner by way of seeing which band's singles sold the most copies. For the record, Country House won, having sold 274,000 copies against 216,000 copies for Roll With It. Yes, this shit made headline news on BBC TV and BBC Radio and all over the place. But this is where we were with Britpop in 1995, capturing the mainstream public imagination in ways rock music hadn't seen since punk rock in the late 1970s. So, before we go into the hurricane of incredible singles and albums that define this truly stacked year, what are your 2 cents, Chris?
My 2 cents are that the Blur and Oasis feud is just legendary and just so much fun. And both of those bands were just, really in the wheelhouse of their most successful periods. And so, it's one thing to have like a feud between two bands talking shit about each other. It's another thing when they're both releasing great music, and so they have the goods to back it up. So that's something there. Other than that, this is when Britpop kind of in 1995 was kind of like grunge in 1992. In terms of becoming a media sensation. And like you said, you had the fashion trends, with the haircuts and the horn rimmed glasses and, like you said, tracksuits and all that other stuff. But and it was becoming trendy. But what it did is it had an influence. It kind of challenged a lot of bands to step up. And so you have a lot of bands trying to out pop one another. The pop in Britpop really came up. And so, Gone, by this point, basically Gone was the influence of the Psychedelic Furs, Echo and the Bunnymen, and the sort of the 80s post new wave stuff. And you were really getting into sort of new sounds, more rocking stuff, and people trying to be originally poppy. And so it really led to a swell of great songs and great volleys and great efforts. And even the Britpop adjacent bands couldn't help but be influenced by because the bombast meter went through the roof. In a lot of these albums, or the swagger. I think Oasis and Blur inspired everybody to get to get some swagger, and that includes, of all people, PJ Harvey.
She practically went glam.
So it's just kind well, I don't know if she necessarily went glam, but she definitely she got that swagger. Her swaying blues and folk and all that, but it just really swagger. If she had a dick, she was wagging it. So So let's get into these singles. We have this lightning round here. So let's go through these because there's some really strong stuff on this list.
There are, definitely. All right, lightning round of seminal Britpop and Britpop adjacent singles and awesome Oasis B-sides of 1995. First, Sleeper with In-Betweener. As far as Britpop B-listers go, Sleeper were one of the better ones, with Louise Wenner's melodically twisty, subtly catchy songs with a sharp lyrical bite being the band's strongest point. This little pop nugget was their first big hit in the UK, and it's easy to see why. Chris?
Yeah, jangly, jaunty, swinging pop and tastefully British. Louise Wenner, she had an engaging voice, and this song's an event. It's really maximal. It's got the horns and it's got it's got the swing to it, and just really really fun, and just good B list Britpop for sure.
Right. Next, the Boo Radleys with Wake Up Boo. This blast of unabashed, effervescent sunshine pop was a huge infectious hit in the spring of 95, with a crisp Motown beat, a bright, catchy, almost bombastic chorus, and massive punctuating horns. Nothing says Britpop in 1995 more than this song. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like Britain decided to do the Mighty Mighty Boss tones, groovy horns, skies groove, and just another really happy, peppy song. As you kind of hinted, it plays like a throwback to 60s girl group music mixed with surf and ska. And so just really eclectic song. It kind of goes all over the place, but it's happy go lucky. For sure.
Right. Next, Edwyn Collins, A Girl Like You. Previously known as the lead singer and main songwriter for the great Scottish indie rock band Orange Juice back in the early 1980s, Collins struck big on his own with this swinging retro 1960s lounge pop masterpiece of a single with a delicious fuzz-pedaled guitar as a monster hook. It was a massive top 10 hit in both the UK and throughout Europe, and even made the Billboard Top 40 in the US. Chris?
Yeah, huge hit. It was all over the place in the summer of 1995. It was ubiquitous on both rock radio and MTV. A great soul groove to it, and like you mentioned, that fuzzy guitar on the solos, in between the verses, just really really cool. And especially like that mixed with the clap drums. So it's just a really good blue-eyed soul effort. And again, it's fuzzy, it's buzzy, it's meaty, and that guitar effect, it's almost like a kazoo.
Yeah.
It's like the guitar is kazoo, and so that's like really really cool. So yeah, Edwyn Collins, he struck lightning in a bottle with A Girl Like You.
Yeah. Next, Menswear with Daydreamer. They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And if so, the 1970s art rock post-punk band Wire must have been overwhelmed with emotion when they first heard this song, because it's as blatant a stylistic ripoff of one band's sound and style as there ever has been in rock history. Seriously, the members of Wire could have gone to court and sued for style infringement. Whatever the case, Menswear were a one-album wonder, with this being the best of the two hits off the record. They recorded a terrible second album that would only be released in Japan, and they broke up soon afterward. Chris?
Yeah, good call on the Wire, love. Just this very British speak-sing vocals on this song with this crashing riff, and it's practically a novelty song because of the speak-sing. It's like quaintly British, and it also, in terms of the rhythm, in terms of the riff, it seems to be like a distant cousin of the theme song to Peter Gunn. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah,
dun.
a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
So it has that going for it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
All right. Next, Long Pigs with She Said. When Lou Reed wrote Candy Says and Jane's Addiction wrote Jane Says, they at least put the woman's name on the song. Oh well, as it is, this crunchy, riff-heavy melodic rocker has a wave the lighter in the air quality to it that makes it fit right in the Britpop milieu. They would go on to have a couple of moderate-sized hits the next year before they disappeared. Chris?
Yeah, this song definitely possesses the requisite drama and bombast of orthodox Britpop. Might
Yeah.
actually be my favorite song on this record because of that crunch. I mean,
Yeah.
the song absolutely does rock, and there's a part of me that wonders if Long Pigs, were instantly influenced by Oasis,
Yeah.
because it's just as loud and just as hooky as the stuff from Definitely Maybe.
Yeah. A lot of bands had one musical direction, heard definitely maybe in Britain, said, "Oh fuck, we got to do something else."
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's almost like an instant pivot. It
Yeah.
it's just kind of strange that it only this is only a few months after Definitely Maybe comes out,
Yeah.
and then they're kind of copying Oasis. Kind of strange.
Right. Next, the Blue Tones with Slight Return. This band had a pretty successful career, actually, putting out albums that charted highly in the UK chart until the early noughties. When you listen to them, it makes you wonder why, because judging from this slice of jangly melodic guitar pop, they were nothing more than Stone Roses wannabes. Anyway, as far as Roses wannabes go, this is pretty good. Hell, it's better than most of what the Stone Roses themselves were making at the time. It was a huge hit too, going to number 2 on the UK singles chart. Chris?
Yeah, this is definitely gentle and jangly. It's a throwback to bands like the Sundays
Yeah.
from the late '80s,
Yeah.
and it's just another song that has a sunny girl group vibe to it, and just a killer melody, and really in the way that it kind of has the groove and the kind of the gentleness of it. It almost reminds me of easy listening Blind Melon. It's not quite as quirky, it's not quite as nasty as some of
Yeah.
that stuff. But if Blind Melon took took their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, it might have sounded something like this.
Yeah. Next, Supergrass with All Right. The kings of the Britpop B-listers with a small but loyal following that they have to this day. Supergrass hit pay dirt when this hit number 2 in the UK singles chart in the summer of '95, making it one of the defining Britpop songs of all time. Basically, it's late 1960s Kinks in their traditional English music hall mode, but revved up on amphetamines. Chris?
Yeah, this band has probably made a killing from licensing this song.
Yeah, they did.
Uh,
They have.
yeah, I mean, it was all over the place for several years in the night. I didn't even know it was Supergrass back then, but it was just all over the place in commercials and all that, and it still shows up now
Yeah.
here and there, and so it's kind of a timeless classic.
Yeah.
Extreme jauntiness at its
Right.
finest, and energetic anthemic stuff, surfy melody and harmony vocals. It's basically a perfect pop song. Music to put you in a really, really good mood.
Yeah. Next, Cast with All Right, another song called All Right. Known as Friends of Oasis, Cast actually had a considerable amount of success with a string of 6 consecutive songs that made the UK top 10 between 1996 and '97. However, it was this song that put them on the map and got people to notice. A lush guitar rocker with a trace of late 1970s new wave in it, it soars with melodies and hooks on top of melodies and hooks. Chris?
Yeah, the thing about this song is it's a basically classic rock power pop in the
Yeah.
Todd Rundgren Cheap Trick vein.
Yeah, very
Uh,
much so. Yeah.
it's kind of like Elastica's song from this era, and
Yeah.
it's because it's great music to strut around in your underwear too. Just catchy as hell.
Yeah,
Catchy as hell.
definitely. Next, Ash with Girl from Mars. This Northern Irish band didn't want to be labeled Britpop for a good reason. Being associated with England or Great Britain while coming from Ireland, even if it's the British friendly northern part, can be a dangerous proposition. But come on, listen to this track. This couldn't be more Britpop in sound, tempo, and style. It's poppy, it's bright, it rocks, and it's melodic as hell. Basically, It's Green Day if Green Day did Britpop, basically.
Yeah.
The single also launched a pretty successful career for the band, with them putting out charting albums and singles for the next 10 years. Chris?
Yeah, the thing about several of these songs that we've covered so far is that they feel like they could have belonged in 1979, but they're
Yeah.
just rocked out more and are more guitar driven. But really, I mean, there's throwback new wave vibes that are pretty apparent. I think this song would have fit Blondie's wheelhouse.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. I could see Blondie doing this song. It's
Yeah.
but yeah, just really really cool and just just really just a sublime slice of pop.
Yeah, really is. All right, next, the Stone Roses with Begging You. Now we get into Britpop adjacent areas. Or maybe not so much, since the 1960s referencing jangly melodic guitar pop that the Roses scored big with in the late 1980s helped usher in what became Britpop in the 90s. On this track, one of only two good tracks on their overall failed follow-up album to their classic 1989 debut, the band touch on the other part of their definable sound, and that is club-worthy electronica-tinged dance rock. And this is a serotonin rush of a track, making you wonder why it wasn't a bigger hit. Chris?
Yeah, this is just pure drum loop disco rock. Pretty close to the Manchester-born EDM rock roots. Really cool drum slap. It's probably a drum machine, but it really slaps. And really really cool guitar noise in the margins.
Yeah.
Hey, there's no real melody or traditional structure, but it's just a pure booty shaking groove,
Yeah.
and it works. And so
Totally.
the Stone Roses' true last hurrah.
Absolutely. All right, now we get to a string of B-sides by Oasis. Yes, these aren't singles. These are the B-sides. Why are we talking about them? Because like we mentioned in the previous episode, Noel Gallagher was on such a roll, on such a hot streak in writing songs that the Oasis B-sides were as good, if not better, than most bands' best songs. So let's start. Oasis, Talk Tonight, the B-side, one of the B-sides to Some Might Say. In the fall of 1994, Oasis performed a disastrous show at Los Angeles' Whiskey A Go-Go, when all the band members, except for Noel Gallagher, were high on crystal meth. Noel was livid, swore to break up the band, and flew to San Francisco to stay at the home of a young woman he, quote-unquote, befriended at the band's previous show in the Bay Area. Apparently, the woman, named Melissa Lim, must have done a great job in not only convincing Noel to stay with Oasis, but also in being the inspiration for one of the most moving and touching acoustic ballads in the Oasis songbook. And that's saying something. Chris?
Yeah, just it sounds like a live recording,
Yeah.
and Noel on lead and backed by Noel, just sweetly
By himself.
Huh?
Noel on lead, backed by Noel, backed by himself.
Okay, let me restate that. Noel on lead and backed by Liam. Yeah, but it's a sweetly neurotic but romantic song, and it's just very 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 simple and very 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 sweet song, and proved that they could do acoustic just as well as they could do electric. And the exciting thing about it is it's part of a two-song suite, in the sense that this song bleeds into the next song,
Right, which I'm going to talk about now.
which is just an extraordinary 1-2 punch.
Yeah. The next song being the other B-side to Some Might Say, Acquiesce. While Some Might Say was the first number one hit Oasis had in the UK, first number one hit, yeah, they had in the UK, the B-side is actually the better song and has endured as one of the band's singularly greatest moments. Even though it's easy to interpret the lyrics as being about Noel's commitment to his brother Liam and persevering together against the odds, Noel has continually stated general friendship in a wide sense and not about anyone specifically is what the song's about. Whatever the case, with its gargantuan riff, its powerful verses sung even more powerfully by Liam, and Noel sending the chorus into the stratosphere, it's an Oasis standard that got played in almost every show, even in the current reunion tour. Is it the greatest B-side of all time? Shit, it may just be. Chris?
Yeah, May Just Be. Rock's absolute balls. Wonderful rock song. My favorite Oasis song. Just perfect and sublime. Just killer vocals from both Liam and Noel. And we believe in one another. I mean, it's weird because there's a menace to Liam's vocals on the verses,
Yeah.
and a weird sweetness to Noel's, and
Yeah.
so
They
it's
balance each other out. Yeah.
yeah, it's just a real really positive, just blast off of a fucking song, and it's amazing that they withheld it from the record because I think it's Oasis's best song. Uh,
A lot of people do think that as well.
yeah.
All right, next, Rockin' Chair, the B-side to Roll With It. Another beautiful acoustic ballad. Its minor key bliss and pained sense of mourning and longing makes it, in a way, the best song the Smiths never wrote. With better production and a full band treatment, this easily could have made it onto What's the Story, Morning Glory. Chris?
Yeah, more restrained than acquiesced, but still energetic. Just really good orthodox pop rock, good acoustic guitar solo, well-placed chime, and just a good old-fashioned rock romp.
Right. Next, Round Our Way, one of the two B-sides to Wonderwall. One of the most relentlessly optimistic songs Noel Gallagher ever wrote. Its lyrical evocation of eternal sunshine and good time vibes are brilliantly augmented by its awesomely bombastic horn section. They practically out-Paul McCartney in this one. Chris?
Yeah, they out Paul, and they out Mick Jagger, because there's a real Rolling Stones vibe to this song. There's the harmonica in the beginning, and then, like you said, just the horns. And so, it's kind of like Oasis doing gentle boogie woogie. It's not quite boogie woogie. It's not that frenetic, but it bops along with a fevered fury, and just really, really good stuff. It's a long song too. It's like 6 minutes, but it is. But it never lets up. It's a relentlessly rocking, horn inflected Stones homage, really.
Yeah, totally.
And McCartney homage.
Yeah. Next, and finally, The Master Plan, the other B-side to Wonderwall. When it comes to epic, dramatic, orchestral pop, many bands and artists from all across the musical spectrum have tried their hand at this popular music style. I suppose the Beatles and the Beach Boys were the two from the rock vernacular that are generally regarded as doing it the best, and rightfully so. But even then, Noel Gallagher's bid for heroic, sweeping, anthemic pop ranks alongside the very best of those bands, and I'm not hyperbolizing. Yet another Oasis song wasted as a B-side. Its lush orchestration guides the languid, mellow verses with the promise of something dramatic that eventually comes through in the titanic chorus and volcanic strings that perfectly punctuate Noel's exquisite melodies. An easy candidate for all-time top 10 Oasis songs. Chris?
Yeah, it's like a perfect song to be a B-side to Wonderwall.
Yeah.
It has that same Beatlesque throwback vibe to it, and it turns the drama up to 11, and it in a way just melodically, and because it's a Noel sung song, and it's got that sweet melody. It's kind of like Don't Look Back in Anger's little brother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
is how I would put it. But yeah, it's kind of stunning. And a comment I made last episode too. But this is at the tail end of when B-sides and one-off singles still meant something.
Yeah.
The kind of fan friendliness. You drop a few nuggets outside of the album for the fans, and to extend your tentacles as far as radio readiness. And so I guess that explains. There's no logical reason that a song like The Master Plan wouldn't make the main cut, unless they were saving it for something more, something special or something extended. And this is where that comes in.
On this episode, we covered 1995 in our Britpop Timeline series, the year that the Britpop musical movement went champagne supernova all over the world. For the next episode, we're going to track the period of 1996 to 97, when the movement released some of its greatest albums and singles, yet began its inevitable decline. Blur reinvented themselves by embracing, of all things, noisy American indie rock. The Verve, in a contrarian move, stepped away from their Britpop adjacent sound of swirling psychedelia and punishing riffs and moved toward a lusher, more melodic, and classically Britpop sound, creating one of the best albums of the decade in the process. Oasis sat atop the summit of Britpop and among all of the heavyweights of rock, producing an indulgent, overwrought mess of an album. But was it really that bad? And of course, Radiohead completely raised the bar for the sonic and artistic possibilities of rock music with a masterpiece that still resonates as one of the greatest albums of all time. Join us next time as the Curmudgeon Rock Report brings you a Britpop Timeline Part 4. And now we're at the part of this 1995 Britpop retrospective when we do the breakdown of key Britpop and Britpop adjacent albums of 1995. And we're going to start with one of both Curmudgeon's favorite albums of all time, Elastica, and their self-titled debut. From late 1993 through 94, Elastica released a series of singles that wowed British music critics and were actually quite successful in the UK singles charts, putting them right smack in the middle of the new wave of British alternative / indie bands that were breaking into the mainstream, as well as providing an alternative to the American rock and pop that were crowding British radio and TV. Anticipation for their debut album was buzzing, and when their self-titled album finally arrived in early 1995, the wait was more than worth it. It was an instant commercial success, going straight to #1 on the UK albums chart, putting them right alongside Britpop leaders Oasis and Blur at the time. It spawned more hit singles, most noteworthy being Connection, which broke through as an international hit, charting highly even in the fickle US market, number 53 in the pop chart, number 2 in the rock chart, earning them a lucrative spot in that year's Lollapalooza tour. Yes, folks, back when Lollapalooza was a tour for rock bands, not, a 2-day festival for shitty pop. Anyway, looking back, it's easy to see what the fuss was all about. The band's brand of sleek, spiky, sexy pop punk was so full of melodic hooks, earworm guitar riffs, and swaggering rhythms that it was undeniably infectious. And with lead singer, guitarist, and main songwriter Justine Frischmann, they had a front woman who oozed cool, laid-back charisma and sexuality. Connection may have stolen its guitar riff from a song by late 1970s post-punk band Wire, but Wire never wrote a song as insanely catchy or breathtakingly sexy as Connection. Stutter and Annie brought the punk rock adrenaline. Hold Me Now and Car Song brought the steamy sensuality. All Nighter and Waking Up brought the blissful pop punk. And 2 to 1 and Line Up brought the jagged art rock. There's a little something here for everyone and any and everything from the post-punk spectrum. Forget about being one of the best albums of the Britpop era. It's one of the best albums of the 1990s, period, and probably one of the most underrated albums of all time. Chris?
Yeah, this is just a delectable pop punk record with some really, really great taut song structures.
Yeah.
And, most of these songs are like 2.5 minutes long. And, so in some ways they're kind of Baroque, but they're like, Baroque on crystal meth, and it just really, really strong. Connection obviously is awesome. It's just one of the great hooks of any song in the 90s. I love Vaseline, which is the album closer. Stutter is awesome. 2 to 1 is awesome. Just a lot of really, really cool stuff. Justine Frischmann was a gifted songwriter, and she was a gifted craftsman. And obviously, as a singer, she, like you said, she just had a sexy voice, and just the way that she could express and phrase some of her lyrics was really, really cool. So yeah, this is one of the coolest albums of the era, and it's just, and I guess you could call it Britpop because it is pop. It is poppy as hell. Just hook after hook after hook after hook after hook. But it has that, but it just has that punkness to it. In some ways, you can kind of call them British Strokes.
Yeah, definitely.
that, in some ways, maybe, who knows, maybe the Strokes were influenced a little bit by Elastica,
Sure,
because
sure.
some of those same structures kind of show up on it. Is This It? So good stuff.
All right, next, we cannot talk about British rock in the 1990s or any year without this band and this album. Chris?
Yes, we're going to talk about Radiohead and one of my favorite albums of all time, The Bends. Awesome album. So by the end of 1993, it sure seemed like Radiohead was headed for a long and increasingly obscure life as a one-hit wonder band. Their hit single Creep was true lightning in a bottle, a superbly dramatic and at times eerily pretty ode to self-loathing and perhaps stalking. But Creep lived on as but it lived on an album in Pablo Honey that was long on ambition but short on songwriting. Like their rarefied air British 90s peers, the bombast was on point, but in the aggregate, it seemed like it was pretty pointless. Imagine then the collective shock of the British masses when they pressed play on 1995's awesome follow-up Radiohead album, The Bends. Album opener Planet Telex was absolutely huge and glorious, yet it was stunningly textured and emotionally rich and subtly haunting, driven as it was by a beautiful keyboard riff, Philip Selway's monstrous drum fills, Johnny Greenwood's incendiary guitar performance, and Tom York's heartached but powerful vocals. That song kicked off perhaps the purest, most soaring cycle of rock songs recorded and produced by anyone in Britain in the entire 1990s. The Bends blast-off title track followed Planet Telex, and the song only upped the drama quotient. There would be no relenting here. Other bangers followed. The gorgeous ballads High and Dry, Fake Plastic Trees, and Nice Dream demonstrated a shockingly strong emotional depth and gave York a platform to show how well he could sing his ass off when the occasion called for it. Those songs also proved this band could take the foot off the gas pedal a little and be just as inviting with acoustic guitars and strings as they could with maximum noise. The album achieves its highest intensity with the middle 1-2 punch of Just and My Iron Lung. Both songs find Johnny Greenwood at his most furious as a player, and both find York effectively leading a noise theater with his most operatic of vocal takes. The album ends with just as much emotional richness as it began with. Street Spirit Fade Out is a simple but lovely electric guitar torch song. Greenwood serves up a beautiful arpeggio as York delivers a brutally lamenting vocal. Street Spirit is a perfect note to end an album that effectively takes on the best kind of arena rock ready, lighting, Max Swagger musical journey. So much for the one-hit wonder label. Radiohead, it turned out, was an endlessly evolving, intellectually stimulating powerhouse of a band. The Bends, for as monumental and as five-star classic level as it was, would not be this band's peak. Startlingly, in retrospect, it wouldn't even be close to peak level Radiohead. But that's something we'll cover when we get to 1997. Right, Arturo?
Yeah, anyone who doesn't have this album on their list of the greatest albums of all time seriously has crappy musical taste and needs to
Yeah.
reevaluate their own taste in music. This album, more than any other Radiohead album, and more than any other album, period, this is the one that had the biggest influence on that wave of British rock in the turn of the century that stressed bombastic guitars and soaring melodies and yearning vocals, a la Coldplay, Travis, Keane, and even a bit of Muse, more than a bit of Muse. So this album was deeply influential and impactful, and its influence wasn't felt until several years later. In its time, it was kind of an outlier. It was really the exception in the whole the Oasis mania going on at the time. But this album ended up being just as important as What's the Story, Morning Glory. Well, maybe not quite, but almost as important. And it's a pivotal record, obviously in Radiohead's discography and their trajectory, because it really does, especially with the guitar textures and the sonic experimentation, point the way toward their next album, which would be their masterpiece. And we'll talk about that, of course, the next episode. So, all right. Speaking of all-time great albums, we're not done yet. Next, another not quite Britpop, but Britpop adjacent. This is PJ Harvey with To Bring You My Love. When PJ Harvey emerged in the early 1990s, she wowed the music press and earned a rabid, passionate cult following with her singularly unique take on merging the blues with primal punk fury and evocative and provocative lyrics that reclaimed aggressive sexuality for women. While having nothing in common with the bands that were defining Britpop at the time, she was without a doubt at the vanguard of the overall tidal wave of Britain's rock revival, making her Britpop adjacent and hard to ignore. It's hard to top the art punk blues masterpiece that is 1993's Rid of Me, so when time came to make the eagerly awaited follow-up album, she moved her innovative sound into the shadows and surrounded it with the sweltering heat of torches. On To Bring You My Love, Harvey's songs have a slower, more simmering, yet darker and more ominous energy that's every bit as powerful as her guitar-heavy earlier work. Songs like the title track, The Dancer, I Think I'm a Mother, and the creepy organ-drenched Down by the Water that stretch out the drama and the inherent desperation and anguish in her lyrics. However, the album has a richness and variety that provides its much-needed counterpoints. Come On Billy and Send His Love to Me are agonizingly gorgeous hybrids of folk rock and chamber pop. While she doesn't quite abandon the grungy blues rock that made her reputation with the songs Meet the Monster and the ferocious Long Snake Moan. To Bring You My Love not only solidified PJ Harvey's standing as, in my very strong opinion, the queen of 1990s alternative rock, but it gave her a second consecutive all-time great masterwork that's just as fresh, disturbing, and relevant now as it was when it was released. Chris?
Yep. This album finished #1 in the Pageant Jop poll, the Village Voices Pageant Jop poll, and also was #1 on the Spin chart. Actually, Spin had it as the #3 album of the 90s in their end of the 90s chart. And so just hugely lauded record, and deservedly so. For as good as Rid of Me was, this was kind of a stunning segue into more subtle but slower, stretchier, sexier, a little bit more versatile. You still had your Meet Some Monsters and To Bring You My Love, which really wouldn't have been out of place on Rid of Me. But then you balance that out with Down by the Water and Send His Love to Me, which is a great song. Teklo, which is a great song. And to do that, and her this theme, and it kind of carries over from Rid of Me. Now she's no longer singing about oral sex that makes people bleed and cutting off her lover's legs, but there is that thematic strand of feminist desperation. The mom that kills her daughter in the river on down by the water. There's To Bring You My Love, which is just basically about obsession and desperation. Meets a Monster, which is basically her asserting her sexual power, and just really she was a singular voice, and just had so much to say, and the guitar work on this album is incredible. Just really fuzzy, swampy, like you said, bluesy guitar and all of that. One thing to lament is that this album does not get the modern day love that it deserves. That in the Rolling Stone chart, the 500 greatest albums of all time list that came out in 2020. Stories from the City, Stories by the Sea from 2000, and Rid of Me are both on that 500. To Bring You My Love is not.
Bullshit. Yeah, that's bullshit.
And I personally think this is her masterpiece. I think it's better than Rid of Me, and it's the best thing she ever did, and it's the thing that really, she didn't have to make another record after this. She was a fucking legend. This now, granted, she made at least three more great records after this. Not quite as great, but 4-star, about 4-star records, and arguably it's Stories by from the City, arguably a 5-star record, but nothing really touches this one. This one moves my soul when I listen to it.
Yeah. All right, next, another of this podcast, one of yours truly, Curmudgeon's favorite bands, another Britpop adjacent album and band that needs to be mentioned and admired and revered more. And they are starting to be already now, thanks to this Oasis reunion tour and this guy being one of the opening acts. Chris?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Long live Richard Ashcroft. That guy's never stopped making music. He's never stopped pushing. Of course, he kind of had to because he got cheated out of all his Bittersweet Symphony royalties.
But that's the next episode, Chris. That's the next episode.
but for 25 years. But anyway, we're talking about the Verve's A Northern Soul. So the Verve's A Northern Soul is an impressively intense album, one on which lead singer and primary lyricist Richard Ashcroft emerged stunningly as one of Great Britain's most intriguing, alluring, and engaging frontmen. For the band, the album represented a tremendous growth phase as both songwriters and arrangers. The first arrived as a notable Britpop adjacent act in 1993 with the album A Storm in Heaven. That debut record was dominated by the soulfully psychedelic, long and winding noiseescapes put forth by Nick McCabe, and a little less so by Ashcroft's reverby and melodic vocal stylings. The songs were secondary to the cool sound the band concocted on the fly in the studio. Now, that's not the case on The Northern Soul. The songs were still on the long side, with most clocking in between 5 and 6.5 minutes, but now there was a palpable pathos and searing emotional depth, with Ashcroft practically spilling his tortured heart onto the wax. The bass and drums were also more prominent in the mix, throbbing way up in front as McCabe's guitars echoed and warbled behind them, and Ashcroft sounded like he was singing from a nearby cavern. The riffs and solos crashed and blasted forth with an expressive urgency. Ashcroft, in turn, sang with more urgency than that, his booming voice flashing pangs of pugnaciousness in some spots and despair in others. Perhaps the fact that Ashcroft's 6-year relationship with his girlfriend disintegrated right before the recording of this album contributed to the naked confessional quality of Ashcroft performances and accompanying lyrics. As for individual songs, there was the rousingly defiant This Is Music, on which Ashcroft croons about his restlessness and his dire need to cling to music as a coping device and as a saving grace. There was So It Goes, a bluesy, snaking take on extreme self-pitying heartbreak. There was the gorgeous History, a strings-driven, dramatically rendered remembrance of romantic failure. Effectively, History was the Verve's first breakaway from the guitar histrionics of Nick McCabe and a glimpse of warmer, fuller, richer sounds to come from this band. There was the menacing, bass-propelled rocker Life's an Ocean, on which Ashcroft voices his struggle not to become completely unhinged as he looks to the future. And then there was the epic title track, on which Ashcroft seethes with longing for freedom from his darker impulses as McCabe serves up the nastiest, sweatiest riff on the entire album, a churning ball of thunder and fury. A Northern Soul was produced by engineer Owen Morris, who remixed Oasis's 1994 masterwork Definitely Maybe into a smash hit. Morris apparently was an edgy guy, as the Verve certainly benefited similarly from the muscularity and swagger that Morris's board work infused. Like Definitely Maybe's final result, this album benefited from a lack of overdubs and the resultant nastiness. But as it turned out, Ashcroft was ready to be a bona fide rock star regardless of who was producing him. The hugeness of his voice, the grandiosity of his ideas, the unfiltered honesty and purposefulness of his lyrics. It was all extraordinary, and it was a preview of even more monumental breakthrough and swaggering star turn he pumped out a couple years later. But as with Radiohead, we'll cover that when we land in 1997. Arturo?
Yeah, this album really does capture the perfect middle point between like the heavy, slightly shoegazer, the heavy psychedelia and guitar, just the guitar overload of their first album, and of course, what would be the next record when they would ironically get more traditionally Britpop. And get way more song oriented. This album finds them right in the middle. You're also forgetting the song "On Your Own," which is one of the best ballads Ashcroft ever wrote. If you go on YouTube, back on MTV, they had a show called 120 Minutes.
Yep.
And it's Ashcroft and the band doing a beautiful, beautiful acoustic version of that track. I highly recommend people check it out. And this is a beautiful record. And I think what gets lost, this is probably the last album where Nick McCabe really showed his guitar rock muscle on this record, because he had the beautiful Ashcroft songs, but you also have that mega heavy guitar. It's very crisp, crystalline guitar sound, as opposed to A Storm in Heaven, their first album. McCabe's guitar sound on this record it's crisper. It's more in your face, and it has an edginess and a weird wiredness to it that really gives us a beautiful texture, and it kind of gives the songs in general, but the album itself, this unsettling undercurrent. It's a very unsettling record.
Yeah,
because both A Storm in Heaven and the next album, Urban Hymns, are actually very soothing records in many ways. This one isn't very soothing. This one is this one is fragmented, it's fractured, and it's frazzled. And
it's fraught.
Exactly. So remember, and people forget that they actually broke up after this album came out. Really, after they toured this record, they briefly broke up, and they got back together for the next one. So
there's a lot of tension going on with this band.
Yeah, a lot of tension, a lot of drugs too.
They were taking ecstasy every day in the studio.
And they acid and cocaine too. This band lived it up big time.
Yeah,
they were into all the drugs. All right, the next album, and now this is a purely Britpop album, and it's a classic. It's considered a classic. Pulp, Different Class. Pulp had been kicking against the music industry tires since the mid-1980s, but they finally achieved some critical notices and moderate commercial success with a couple of singles in the early 1990s that saw them abandoning their generic synth-pop sound and embrace more guitars, tighter song structures, and more melodic accessibility to put them in the Britpop forefront with the likes of Blur, Suede, and Elastica. Their 1994 album, His and Hers, was a commercial breakthrough in the UK, hitting the top 10, and in lead singer and songwriter Jarvis Cocker, with his retro 1970s clothing, ironic nerd persona, and stalker voyeur lyrics that also managed to hit on insightful social commentary, they had a genuine indie rock star. The album that consolidated their status as one of the biggest British bands of the decade, Different Class, came out in October 1995. But the song off that album that became their biggest and most iconic song, Common People, came out earlier in the spring of that year. A perfect synthesis of 1980s synthpop and 1990s style indie guitar rock, Cocker tells an autobiographical story of, while being an art school student, meeting a Greek girl from a wealthy family with an obsession for, quote unquote, class slumming or class tourism. That is, going about pretending to be a working class or poor person, hanging out with working class or poor people to see what it's like to live life on the other side. Essentially, it's ascribing glamour to poverty, knowing she can end it all with just a phone call to her rich dad, as Cocker mentions in the lyrics. It's patronizing and insulting, and Cocker's anger comes out seething in the words with a passion that non-Oasis Britpop wasn't known for at the time. It's not an exaggeration to say it's not just one of the greatest singles of the 1990s, it's quite possibly one of the greatest singles of all time. The other brilliant single and massive hit from Different Class is Disco 2000, with its guitar cheekily quoting the chorus melody from Umberto Tozzi's 1979 disco song Gloria, later covered more famously in 1982 by Laura Branigan. Cocker tells another first-person autobiographical narrative of having a teenage crush on a girl and wondering what it would be like when and if they met in the future. T-Rex style guitars and a genuine disco beat equals solid Britpop gold, and again, one of the best pop singles of the 1990s. And unfortunately, that's where my praise for the album ends. I know this puts me on a very small island with a very minority opinion, but the rest of the album doesn't really hold up. Misshapes and Sorted for Ease and Whiz are just drab pieces of melodramatic pomp in the worst way, and in I Spy, Cocker takes his hipster voyeur shtick way too far, and the spoken word vocals are beyond obnoxious. Bar Italia is empty schmaltz, while Something's Changed is a corny pastiche of early 1960s girl group pop, if early 1960s girl group pop was dour and depressing. To me, Elastica's self-titled album is 100 times better and deserves all the praise Different Class gets, both back in the 1990s and retroactively. But hey, Different Class does have those two phenomenal all-time great songs, so it's worth mentioning. Chris?
Yeah, and I actually would put Misshapes in that boat. I think that's a phenomenal single too. But no, yeah, you're right. This album is hit or miss. I mean, obviously the hits are fantastic. You know, Common People is awesome. Disco 2000 is awesome. Again, I love Misshapes. I actually don't mind Sorted for Ease and Whiz for his cheeky and as corny as it is. It's delectably corny and cheesy. The thing about this band, I will say this: there was an evolution here, like his and hers. And they're still kind of doing sort of mid 80s post new wave keyboardy kind of stuff and kind of aping the psychedelic furs. Here they abandon that and they get more into a rocking mindset and sort of a more more sort of modern pop. And Jarvis Cocker's obnoxious, but he's delightfully obnoxious. Obnoxious and misanthropic. Nobody did obnoxious and misanthropic better than Cocker, and he kind of struts his stuff in that. There's some pretty strong fuck yous on this record, and it's almost in some spots it's almost a subtly dirty record.
Yeah.
But yeah. Any album that has Common People on it, has its virtues, and you can't discount it. And there's a reason why it's on this list, because the singles on this album are just so strong.
All right. Speaking of bands that had great singles, Oasis's number one contender.
Yeah, Blur. They came back with their third album in 3 years, The Great Escape. So let's talk about this record, which is really underrated and kind of stuck back in the 90s. It hasn't, it's lost steam here in the modern era, but which is too bad and unfair. So Blur, let's talk about them. Blur's The Great Escape is a concept record about coping. It's the third in a trilogy of albums from Blur that explored the quirks, joys, mundanities, absurdities, disappointments, and ridiculousness of living the British life in the early to mid-1990s. The Great Escape is the most pointed and perhaps the most poignant in its in its social commentary. The album built itself around and toggles between two tracks. First, there's the character studies. For as cheeky as a band leader and singer that Damon Albarn could be, he also was an empathetic chap. Here we meet characters searching for either spiritual escapes, as with the struggling married couple on the skyish bopper Fade Away, or the lonely protagonist on woozy psychedelic ballad He Thought of Cars, or for literal escapes, as with the stifled, upwardly mobile urban professional looking to skip town on the rocking anthem Country House, or the entire country of Great Britain on the riff and harmony-tastic ode to the British National Lottery, It Could Be You. Albarn also laments those folks for whom an escape may never be possible, like the sad sack living the same day over and over again on the music hall-inspired Arnold Same, or the guy hopelessly stuck at work on the gently rendered electropop nugget Yuko and Hero. The music on these tunes, driven largely by Graham Coxon's guitar, is never depressing, even if their characters are. Now, second, as far as those tracks, there's Albarn taking the piss out of people he can't stand. He goofs on upper crust schemers and scoundrels on the jaunty stereotypes. He sarcastically lauds the bullshitter holding court at the local pub on the sublime La 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 power pop number Charmless Man. He verbally slays obnoxious, decadently drunk club hoppers on the cheekily thumping Top Man. He expresses disgust for a tacky aristocratic magnate who these days you could picture as Donald Trump on the fun rocker Mr. Robinson's Quango. He snarls at a guy trying his darndest to conform to television-ready standards on Dan Abnormal, which, given that the title is an anagram for Damon Albarn, could well be an up-tempo expression of self-loathing. The Great Escape is pretty much a forgotten record these days, given the deified status of 1994's masterfully diverse Parklife and 1997's thoroughly rocking self-titled album. This album is largely and dismissively viewed as a stepping stone footnote between those two albums. Weird, considering that back in 1995, Country House was a #1 single in Britain and the album sold 3 million plus copies. Oh well. But god damn it, here we are doing our best to put it back on the modern radar. It deserves lots and lots of props. Albarn was arguably never as focused or as deeply affecting as a lyricist as he was on The Great Escape, and Coxon showed off his versatility and natural swing as a guitarist here as well. The album really is a moving study in the things that bring us close to the ledge and the things that keep us from going over that ledge. Damon Albarn proves that coping can be healthy and rich. In that light, The Great Escape is a hell of an artistic accomplishment. Arturo?
Yeah, I see this album as Parklife's much angrier younger brother. Because a lot of the lyrical themes aren't that far away from Parklife. But like you said, it focuses more on the coping part, on getting over depression and sadness. And of course, like the title says, trying to escape it all. And so basically, that's what this album is. And another thing about this record, I mean, musically, it's just as stylistically diverse and just as rich as Parklife. But Parklife does has a slightly better songs, the slightly hookier songs, and there's a little bit more hope and optimism in Parklife. This album is very dark. This album's really kind of angry. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think I said it's the darker side of Parklife. And sometimes you need the darkness for the light to shine brighter. And another thing about Blur, about this period of Blur, is really what it is that like the Britpop era of Blur saw the band hopping, and I don't want to say hopping. That's kind of like insulting them, but just jumping from like one or touching on one aspect of the British music's past after another, from one subgenre of rock to another. But what ties it all together, what keeps it modern, quote unquote modern for the time, is Graham Coxon's guitar. He was a secret weapon in that band, and he's the one that gave him that indie alternative punky edge.
Yeah.
His guitar riffs were spiky and punky. His guitar solos were noisy and almost Sonic Youthish, in some parts. And of course, in the next album, that shit would really come to the forefront. And the next album would be Blur. That's Graham Coxon's album, the next one. But for now. This is the third of Blur's trilogy. Modern Life is Rubbish, Park Life, and The Great Escape. That's the Britpop trilogy. Those three albums might as well be one entire triple album.
Yeah,
in terms of their lyrical scope, the narratives, the character sketches, and character vignettes. They really all work together as one unified whole. So
yeah, no, they do absolutely. More power to Auburn and Coxon.
Yeah. All right. Next, and finally, we can only end this episode with you know who. By 1995, Oasis had become arguably the biggest band in the UK, thanks to the phenomenal commercial and critical success of their debut album, Definitely Maybe, and all the hit singles it spawned. Only a year after its release, they were already headlining the Glastonbury Festival, and they were getting regular airplay on MTV, on the radio and on MTV throughout Europe and various parts of the world, even in the US, where, people forget, Live Forever actually got considerable airplay in several markets and made the top 10 of the US Billboard Modern Rock chart. Oasis were primed for a follow-up album that would vault them into the stratosphere, and boy did that happen, and then some. What's the Story? Morning Glory was a worldwide blockbuster album in the US and everywhere else outside the UK, thanks to the ubiquitous radio and MTV presence and instant classic aura of the singles Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger, and Champagne Supernova, which was a single in the US. They were the one band of the Britpop movement that defined it for the world, and by doing so, managed to transcend it, and in the process become one of the most popular and beloved bands of the decade. In their native UK, however, it was a different story. They were an all-encompassing pop cultural phenomenon, the likes of which arguably hadn't been seen, heard, or felt since Beatlemania or even Stones Mania. They sold more records than T-Rex, the Sex Pistols, and the Jam combined. They had more media presence and were more upfront in the pop culture of the day than Led Zeppelin or The Who were. They were more charismatic than Pink Floyd. That's not saying much. They had a wider ranging appeal than The Cure. They had the movement... they and the movement they led blew away by a country mile their immediate forebears, the Stone Roses, and the movement they led. The Oasis phenomenon was one of those rare instances where you had a band that were a force of nature as a live band, a force of nature as a commercially popular force, a force of nature of critical respect, well, mostly, and a force of nature of media coverage. Of course, none of this would have mattered, and their popularity wouldn't have endured as timelessly as it has had, crossing over to ensuing generations, if the music didn't back it up. And only the bitterest, most hardcore Oasis hater would refuse to admit that the first two Oasis albums, and all the B-sides to those astonishing singles, are standard bearers of the entire canon of rock music that will still be listened to and revered to for as long as people are interested in listening to rock music. As someone who teaches university students for a living and has been doing so for almost 20 years, having seen already multiple generations go by, I can tell you as someone who teaches English, therefore converses with the students, that for younger people just getting into rock music, Oasis are one of a very few number of 1990s bands, perhaps only a handful, alongside Nirvana and Green Day, that have become the gateway bands for getting into rock and roll. Live forever indeed. Chris?
Yeah, this album, this is Noel Gallagher swinging for home runs and trying to out Beatles the Beatles. I mean, just the swagger and the confidence and the chops are really heavily evident on this record. Now, yeah, as I said on the previous episode, I actually prefer Definitely Maybe just because I love the the rawness and the loudness and the intensity of that record, which is sort of never relenting. Here you get more diversity, and and granted, my argument, is a little harder to defend when you have Roll With It, Wonderwall, and Don't Look Back in Anger all in a row. Yeah, which are like, that's perfect, more perfect, and perfecter, all in a row. And then obviously Some Might Say is a great song and a great single as well.
And one of the best album closers of all time, Champagne Supernova.
Yeah, Champagne Supernova's there. And then, yeah, you get the jaunty sort of 60s throwback and She's Electric. Morning Glory is a kick-ass rock song. So yeah, just a lot of good stuff on here. But again, this is Noel's sort of statement, or Noel's statement record, where he's just like, "Fuck you, we're the best band in the world, and we're about to prove it," and they pretty much do. And so, yeah, these are a couple of 5-star records, Definitely Maybe, and What's the Story, Morning Glory. Oasis was definitely the defining band of Britpop, and really, it's not just the pop; it's the noise, the swagger, and the sweat, and just the fury of what they were doing, but also the beauty. I mean, Don't Look Back in Anger is just a beautiful song. I mean, Wonderwall is beautiful, and then I like Roll With It because it's just such a optimistic, poppy, peppy song, and just pure sing-songy goodness. So, yeah, lots to love about this record, and it really defines the mid '90s. And it's good to see Oasis back and putting on these shows and getting such good coverage and
selling out stadiums in North America.
Yeah, and selling out stadiums, and they're going to gain new fans from this as more clips hit YouTube. They're going to get a new generation of fans for sure. Gen Z is going to be into Oasis now, and so that's just very life affirming now, isn't it, Arturo?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you read about the stories coming out of these shows, these recent shows, and they're very, very multi-generation. Like, yeah, I mean, they wouldn't be able to sell out these stadiums if it were all, aging hipsters from the 1990s. They would have been able to sell out these stadiums if it were just those people going to these shows. You have people in their 30s, in their 20s, in their teens, entire families. It's not all dudes drinking beer. A lot of women are at these shows, women of various ages. It just really is an event. This is the concert event of the year. And it's the reason why we're doing this Britpop series. And to put, the brilliance of early Oasis into context, into it wasn't just they were the premier band, but there were other bands too that, still deserve praise and talk and an introduction to younger generations of fans. And that's what we hope these episodes do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our goal. We're presenting a public service here, folks.
That's right.
Overdose on Britpop. We command you.
I mean, a lot of people going to these Oasis shows are exactly doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Mainlining Wonderwall. There's worse fates than that.
Yeah. So, Chris, we are finished with Britpop 1995, and we're moving on. 2 more episodes to go in this series.
Yep, 96 and 97. And so we'll be doing the 1996 episode next. It was, 1995 was so momentous that there was a lot of vibes from it that spilled into 96. And it was kind of a continuation of what was going on there. By then, Britpop was a trend, and sort of the fashionista stuff that started to happen in 95 really gripped the country in 96.
Yeah, and
then,
97, because I
and
put those 2
97.
years together. Yeah.
Yeah, and so really going to be an important discussion as we continue to go through this. So we'll be on part 4 next time. So looking forward to it, Arturo.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And with that, folks, as we always do at the end of these episodes, we encourage you to join our Facebook Curmudgeonly community. Good times are had up there. Arturo posts lots of cool stuff, and we get some really strong interaction from some of our frequent flyers. So thank you, folks, for participating and really being as passionate as we are, and for listening to the show. So you can join the Curmudgeonly community too. It's invite only, but we'll let you in unless you're a complete cretin that's banned from schools. So facebook.com/group/curmudgeonrock is the URL, and you'll be able to join in the mirth and merriment. Have anything to say about this episode? Do you disagree with any of the things we said? Do you think that we undersold pulp? Are you a pulp fanatic? I guess we'd like to hear from you, because we really want a passionate defense of pulp. And you can send us that fan mail at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. And as always, we'll have a Spotify playlist that'll compile a lot of the music that we talked about in this episode, a lot of this great 1995 Britpop, all the singles and select cuts from all the albums. And you'll be able to access that via our episode description, which you can access wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple or Stitcher or Amazon or any of the other podcasting platforms out there. And, just plug in, listen to us first, but then you'll have a soundtrack to really enjoy and get back in the Wayback Machine and follow along to those songs. So dig it.